Scott, do you think we should get started? Okay. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Is everyone able to see my screen here? Great, see some nodding, thank you. I think you're all muted, so great, well, we're ready to get started. So my name is Meredith Perks. I am with Vandewaal and Associates, and I have been working with City of Middleton on the strategic planning process. I see a lot of familiar names and faces in the room tonight. So we've probably talked before and maybe even talked about the vision and framework that we'll be reviewing tonight, but just really glad to see everyone here. Appreciate you making the time on a really nice kind of early teasing spring day, I think. So appreciate, being here and being on your computer tonight to join us as we review some really exciting information. And if you have been part of some of the previous conversations on the vision and framework, I think you're going to see some new material tonight that you will, hopefully, have response to and be glad to see. So I'm joined tonight by my colleagues, Scott Harrington and Lupita Alvarez with Vandewaal and Associates. Jeff Maloney will also be joining us. We'll be running the breakout sessions at the end of the meeting. We also have Kevin Bruner from PAA and Myra from EQT here tonight to join, who are part of our sub-consultant team to, answer questions or contribute, on some of their work in this process, and will be, available. So we would just appreciate the team for being here tonight. And then I also see we have a number of strategic plan advisory committee members, people who have been participating in our vision panels, city council members and committee members and staff. So just appreciate everyone who's been involved in this process so far and who's able to be here tonight. And we'll do some polling questions here shortly to kind of get a sense for who's in the room. And that'll really help us with our conversation too. So as I mentioned, just want to thank everybody for being here and that this meeting is going to be recorded. So we ask that you remain muted until the breakout discussion section, and we'll be able to unmute. If you have a technical question or something, you can use the chat box. Lupita is going to be monitoring the chat. We're primarily saving questions and comments for the breakout sessions. So use the chat if you have any questions, or save a question for the breakout sessions at the end. And then, if you have any questions regarding the planning process or some follow-up comments, my email address is here, and I'll make sure that that's in the chat during the meeting so that you can just follow up directly. So we do have a lot of content to cover tonight, and a lot of information and discussion to get through. So we'll kind of start us off by just regrounding ourselves in the strategic plan process. What is a strategic plan? Go over the vision and framework, really for the bulk of the discussion, and use polling questions and other sort of opportunities to get some feedback on what we're thinking on that direction, and then have breakout sessions towards the end. As we'll talk about when we get to that stage, we'll probably leave the meeting from the breakout sessions. So hopefully you can stick around for that conversation, and then head out when you are when you're ready. But the main purpose of tonight's meeting is to review this vision and framework for the strategic plan and get some feedback from you to really kind of affirm the direction that this is headed in, and make sure that we're in sort of agreement that this is the right way to move forward as we go into the next phase of the planning process. So for this planning process, as you'll see, we're really here in this middle section of step 3. This first steps 1 and 2 really took up the bulk of our work in the last year. And since the new year, we've been drafting the vision and strategic framework, and then working with our different input and stakeholder groups like city council and staff, department heads, as well as our vision panels and advisory committee to get some feedback and direction on the drafts that we had prepared, and really had some valuable conversations and those up until this point, and those have really helped us craft and adjust the vision and framework that you'll see tonight. So we're here in this planning process around activity 6. From here, with this input tonight and from this input that we can collect online as well, we'll go into the preparation of the plan and the implementation action plan. So getting into the meat of that, which will start to roll out in the late spring of this year. So to start us off, we just wanted to run a few polling questions to get a sense of who's in the room and who's joining tonight. And I'll have Scott walk us through that process and kind of help us collect these answers. But as we go through the polling questions throughout the evening, we'll ask polling questions on the content as well. Just want to make sure you're aware that these are, anonymous polling tools, and they're really just a diagnostic tool for us. It's about kind of measuring a relative priority, and it's not a voting tool for one particular idea. So we're just kind of taking this as a temperature of everybody in the room. Everybody can see the results, so we know what level of kind of consensus or agreement or commonality there is, but it's not necessarily a voting tool, and it'll stay anonymous. Hopefully everyone can kind of answer these polls honestly. But these first questions are good kind of test questions because they're really just about who's in the room. So Scott, I'll let you take over as I launch the polls here.
Thanks, Meredith. I think recognized, I think almost everybody on the meeting, so you've all been through the drill here, but Meredith will pop up a question and then give you a few seconds to answer it, and we'll be able to see the results immediately. So we'll get the first one here. So first question is, do you live and or work in Middleton? Please pick one of these choices. So living, not employed in town, live and work, live but work elsewhere, etc. So it looks like there's about 20 of you on here right now. So, and I know several of those are consultant folks, so they probably won't answer all the questions. It's probably about 14, 15 public participants.
Scott, just to clarify, even though I have 2 screens, I'm only voting once.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All right, it's probably all we're going to get. So 42% of you live in Middleton, but not working here, and another 33% living and working. So we'll go to the next one. So next one is, how long have you lived in town? If you live here. So if you answered that you didn't live in Middleton, then just don't answer this question. All right, so bulk of you over 10 years, and a couple of folks 1 to 5 years. And we'll go to the next one. Next one, how old are you? As Meredith said, this is anonymous, so we won't tell. So yeah, back up to about 12 there. So bulk of you between 46 and 65, and then a third over 66, and 8% under 46. Let's go to the next one. Here we go. So which best describes your racial or ethnic identity? You can select all that apply. So You're not limited to just one response. All right, so 92% white and 8% Asian. A couple others coming in there. All right, go on to the next one. Next one, do you participate in Middleton committee, commission, council, or are part of city staff? So, like I said, I recognize quite a few of you. So about 2/3 yes, and another third not directly involved. So the next one, did you participate in the strategic plan vision panel or an advisory committee? As it relates to this project. So if you 42% have already participated or in one of those roles. Another 58% no. Okay. And then we had another public workshop back in November. If you can remember that far back, I know I have a problem with all that's happened over the last few months, but if you can remember that far back, whether you were with us back then. So yeah, about 60-40. So welcome to the new folks. Appreciate you coming tonight, and welcome back, obviously, everybody who was with us in the fall. I think we got one or two more.
That's it for this
That's
section
it.
of polling
Okay,
questions.
great.
Yep. So thank you.
Well, thanks. It's helpful to us, just get a sense of who's here, and hopefully that is helpful to all of you as well.
Okay. So as I mentioned, wanted to kind of start things off with a bit of a recap, especially for maybe some of the new folks who haven't participated in a strategic plan meeting yet, about what the strategic plan is and how it might how it differs from the comprehensive plan. So maybe you participated in one of the comprehensive plan meetings recently, or you're just more familiar with that term and know that there are some similarities, but how are these different? So the comprehensive plan is statutorily required by the state, and it's updated every 10 years. And the city of Middleton just adopted one in 2021. It's a really great plan, and it had a very robust engagement process with including community surveys and business surveys. So you're probably familiar with that plan. And what a comprehensive plan does is take, it's broad and it's aspirational. It has a 20-year outlook, and it looks community-wide and really discusses issues of physical growth and development. It touches on a lot of different topics, but is really thinking about how the community might physically change and what it wants to be in the future. The strategic plan is also future oriented. It takes a long-term view, but it's more of an organizational plan. It has a clear and compelling vision that's a bit more short-term or shorter term than the comprehensive plan, maybe a vision for 10 years out, thinking and establishing goals and recommendations and a measurable implementation plan that has short, medium, and long-term action steps that will help accomplish this vision. But again, it's a bit more organizational focus. It'll really be a tool for the city, its staff, elected officials, and residents to just move things forward with direct steps. It aligns various plans with city resources. So we know Middleton has lots of plans out there. How do those connect with city resources to get implemented? Thinks about staffing and organizational structure, as well as facilities, and then, you know, does tackle big picture and big thinking issues and values for the community like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and gets those conversations probably more started than concluded, but, you know, brings those considerations into this process, as well as sustainability, and has a definite kind of financial and practical component to it. So that's sort of the kind of difference between the two plans, and we can kind of continue to talk about that since it is something that maybe a strategic plan is not something we're as familiar with, but it's really about those organizational goals, recommendations, and implementation to move the city towards its vision. So for us, and as we build the implementation or the strategic plan, we want to kind of share a little bit about the plan structure. So we have the comprehensive plan out there, just adopted, as we said, taking in a lot of the information from that plan and from the public process that took place during the comprehensive plan last year, and in having that help us inform the strategic plan. We then used a strategic vision, mission, and framework to kind of be the building blocks for the strategic plan, with the vision being sort of its broad, that 10-year broad aspiration, organizational aspiration, especially for Middleton. The mission statement being the values and purpose that really guide Middleton government and will really be useful to the staff, department heads, and elected officials to think about sort of those operational steps and how to accomplish the vision. And then a strategic framework that has core principles and strategic objectives to it to help advance particular actions that will accomplish the vision. So hopefully as we move through these, we're going to break all of these things down. They'll start to make more sense, but we wanted to sort of upfront show a little bit about how these things will get put together to ultimately build there at the bottom, the implementation action plan. So coming into this process, like as I showed in the planning process, this has been something that we've been developing in the last few months and receiving lots of inputs to build out this draft vision and framework. We heard from our 6 vision panels and advisory committee on not only, in the early stages on what was important to build the vision, but then also reactions on what our initial drafts look like. We had the public visioning workshop and survey, which we know some of you were able to attend, and asked a lot of those kind of questions about what makes Middleton a special place to live, and helped inform all of this. We had direct contact with all of the department heads and city council alders, and then completed operational analysis and asset and opportunity analysis to really kind of dig into some of the data of the city organization and the city as a community about what needs are there and how the strategic plan could help address some of those. So those are some of the inputs that helped us get to this point. And wanted to just highlight some of what we heard, specifically from the public vision workshop back in November. So if you weren't able to be there, the meeting was scheduled, or structured somewhat like this evening's, where we had some polling questions. We also had discussion and got into some of the kind of bigger picture ideas about what Middleton is and where we want to see it in the future. So some of the key questions in our discussion were, why do you live in Middleton? What are 2 of the reasons that brought you to Middleton? And some of them, just a few of the kind of top responses are listed here. We heard a lot about the very strong schools, the friendly neighbors, and the way that the good neighbor spirit, the good neighbor community is really a real thing in Middleton, not just a slogan. And that comes through and is really valuable to people. Safety and its regional location and accessibility were all things that made Middleton a unique place to live, or why people chose to live there, as well as the parks and open space system. So the city parks and the conservancy lands and natural resources all sort of bundled under that one to be really high value assets to people that live in Middleton. We also asked, what do people feel optimistic about for the future of Middleton? What are you encouraged for the future in the city? And we heard that, the strong financial position that the city is in, or the strong financial practices that the city has are encouraging. There's an engaged public. As you'll see, we will talk about how there may be a need to diversify the engagement of the public and of residents in with the city in decision making. But generally speaking, and especially compared to other communities, it is a very engaged community. There's high value for the taxes, relatively low tax rate, but a really high level of service. And so there's, something to feel good about for the future, and just a commitment to the preservation of outdoor space and its Middleton's natural resources. Of course, there are some concerns thinking about the future, and so we use these to think about what's needed and what needs to be addressed by this strategic plan. So issues of access were raised, from transit and transportation infrastructure to more digital access like internet across the entire community, and making sure everybody has strong access to the resources they need. Infrastructure maintenance in terms of roads, housing affordability and growth. So seeing a lot of, growth in the community and a high demand for housing, but how to keep it affordable and how to deal with some of the physical constraints of the community when you can't really grow out your boundaries, how to address housing in that situation. And then some of the limitations that are just placed on the community from outside forces like tax levy limits and how that could impact future services. So those were just some of the things that were raised in both the online survey and in the breakout discussions that we used to think about while we were drafting this vision and framework. We also asked in the workshop just a few polling questions to sort of get a sense of, in particular, residents' opinions on how the city of Middleton as a government or as an organization was doing. So, first question was about communication and how does the city do in informing residents about issues that are facing the community. So this is this one here. As you can see, responses were, primarily in the good to fair range. So the city already does a really great job with online information. The website is strong, and there are email lists that you can sign up for. So information does get out there. We heard in some of our conversations that, there could be opportunity to streamline some of that process or make the information a bit more accessible. It's there, but you kind of have to dig for it. So we saw primarily a strong response, but maybe some room for improvement in terms of getting more excellence out there or addressing some of these folks that, thought there were, was room for improvement. So communication being a big issue that came forward. And then rating the performance of Middleton on the value of services for taxes paid, really important topic for residents. And so you could see that the response here was, again, very strong. Most felt that there was a good or excellent sort of return on your tax dollars in terms of the services you received. And so I think this topic or issue is really about continuing that and dealing with some of the constraints like levy limits and others that continue to have that strong value, but address some of these outside forces. So this was, again, some input from the vision workshop that we used to build the vision and framework graphic and product. So this is a draft of the strategic plan, vision, and framework, and really kind of put into graphic form. So at the moment, this looks like a lot of information, and it is. So we're going to break down tonight each individual component and have a chance to digest it and discuss it. So, but kind of wanted to show you up front everything together. I'll walk us through this graphic a little bit and try and zoom in where I can so that we can kind of get a better look at it. But essentially we have this starts with the mission statement and vision statements. And as I said, the vision statement is that broad aspiration for the community as a whole and addressing operational goals. There we go. So you can see the vision a little bit better here. And again, we'll look at this more closely, but we have the vision statement sort of at the center of this discussion and the mission statement, which is intended to really direct city operations, city staff, and the goals and purpose of the city as an organization. We then have these here are our core principles, and these are four essential values or principles that are really embedded in everything that the city does and are meant to inform all strategic actions that are taken, all of the outcomes that the city is trying to achieve. These are at the center of accomplishing this vision and inform what are more strategic or action-oriented objectives. And we'll break those down a little bit in a moment as well. And then here we have the 5 strategic objectives. And those are more outcome-based and action-oriented efforts to accomplish the vision. So this all is compiled into a single graphic that hopefully, the exact layout of it can still be a work in progress, but generally the direction of it would be a tool, a working document for city staff, residents, and elected officials to all refer back to in the strategic plan and remind everyone of where we're trying to go, what our core principles and values are, and what sort of energy or objectives we've identified to move things forward. So, and really kind of breaking this document down will be the remainder of our discussion here tonight. So from here, I'll let Scott kind of walk us through the first 2 of those elements, which are the strategic vision and mission statements.
Thanks, Meredith, and appreciate you going over that. I know, everybody here, your time is valuable, and sometimes you kind of ask, well, I went to the meeting, so what? And I'm hopeful that you will see, for those of you that participated in the fall and what Meredith reviewed in terms of what we heard at that meeting, how that's reflected back through the information that we're going to present tonight. And then likewise, those of you that were on a vision panel or on the council or the advisory committee, what you saw there is a different take on what we presented to you, and we reshaped it based on the input that we received from all of you. So if you were on a panel or on the committee, we had originally brought 9 objectives, and through that discussion, it became clear that 4 of those were really kind of central key pieces that underlie everything else, which is what you see in that circle. And then the other 5 were kind of more outcome oriented. So we restructured it then to really call out those 4 as guiding principles, and then those others as sort of strategic directions. So just kind of wanted to point out that these meetings really are quite valuable to us and to this process as we put this information together. We do try to listen and try to respond, and hopefully you're seeing that here tonight, both from how we're responding to what we heard in the fall, as well as what we've heard over the past couple of months as this product has evolved. So what we're going to do is kind of walk through these sort of 4 component parts: the vision, mission, then these core principles, and then these strategic directions. We'll kind of take them as a group and then ask some kind of quick polling questions about general level of agreement. I know there's a lot in here and there's a lot of nuance. And so what I would ask is that as we kind of go through these things and you have specific questions or you have specific, points of clarification or points that you would like to make, to kind of write those down, because when then we, at the end of the meeting, or let's say at the end of our presentation, when we break into smaller groups, that's when we'll want to kind of discuss more the nuance of your reactions to these. So we know the polling questions kind of just sort of scratch the surface and give us a general idea of where people are, but then we'll use the discussion section to kind of get more into that level of nuance. So I think the best way to do that would be to just kind of take down some notes as we go through each of these components. And then when we go into the breakout sessions, you can share with us your more detailed thoughts rather than just the polling questions on general level of agreement or disagreement. So let's start with the vision and mission statement. This is the vision. as Meredith said, we used the comprehensive plan really as a base. It had a pretty good mission state or vision statement in it, but we did want to make it, really help drive the strategic plan. Wanted to make sure that it was really very clearly based in Middleton. And, the idea here is that we should be able to kind of draw a straight line from our vision to our guiding principles, to our strategic objectives, and to the actual recommendations. So this really is a foundation for the whole plan, and picks up on that comprehensive plan vision, but expands on it a little bit to really help tie it into this particular planning effort. So I'll give you all just another second to kind of take that on. And so this is, aspirational, inspirational for the community as a whole. The mission statement is then kind of internally, okay, if that's where the community wants to go, then as an organization, as staff members, as council, we'll go to the mission statement. Then what is our mission in terms of driving towards that vision? And so there's some overlap between these two, but that's really the difference between the vision statement and the mission statement. So I'll give you a minute to take that in. So again, if you've got any thoughts, if you want to kind of just jot those down, and we'll discuss that in the breakout sessions. But we'll just kind of ask a couple of general quick polling questions here about your relative level of agreement with what you saw there. So looking for general level of agreement on the strategic vision, the first thing we put up there, from strongly agree to strongly disagree, and there's a no opinion there in the middle. (12 of 18). Okay, that was about it. So 50% strongly agree, 42 agree, and 8% no opinion. So thank you. And then we'll do the same then with the mission statement. So again, general level of agreement with the mission statement that we just shared. A little more diversity here, but definitely leaning towards agree and strongly agree. Couple of no opinions and a disagree. So thank you for that. So again, make any notes that you have on that, and we'll discuss that in the breakout. With that, we'll go to core principles, and Meredith will kind of walk us through those four.
Thanks. So as Scott mentioned, the core principles really represent a change from some of the folks that might have seen our original draft or the previous version of the vision and framework that had 9 strategic objectives. These were originally strategic objectives, but we did find that and receive the feedback that these are really more value-based or principle-based things that are included or embedded in all of the actions that the city should take, and really be more drivers of the other actions and more outcome-based strategic objectives. So we reorganized this vision and framework to give these sort of a separate category and a separate role in this document. And one of the things, as you see here, these listed out, there are icons associated with each core principle, and those will be repeated throughout the planning document, the strategic plan document, and then can also be repeated through the implementation process as you start to put into practice these programs or recommendations. You can directly link them back to a core principle and show that they might advance equity or sustainability, and hopefully that each action the city is taking is reflecting multiple core principles, but it's just a graphic way to kind of keep connecting back to the framework and the strategic plan and these kind of core community principles. So we'll walk through sort of what the sort of essence of each of these are, and then kind of again can kind of save your thoughts as we move into the breakout sessions to discuss them in detail. So an equity-centered environment is really about having equity-centered decision-making structures and considerations that are incorporated into critical programs and processes. And so it's creating an environment that addresses inequity, and including racial and cultural inequity specifically. So that's sort of as you'll see on each of these slides up here, this text, and this is what's reflected on the vision graphic, are sort of the essence of that principle. And then here in these colored bands, these bullet points are just some sort of examples of either actions that could be taken, initiatives or steps that would support this principle. Again, since these started out as strategic objectives, these were pieces that had been developed there and want to make sure that they remain incorporated into the remainder of the plan. So they might, recommend, like in this case, developing a citywide strategy to address equity, anti-racism, and inclusion as a recommendation for additional work, additional action to be taken that would further sort of embed this principle in the community and advance its accomplishment. Give everyone a moment to keep reading there. The second core principle we wanted to highlight here is sustainability and resiliency. So for this, the essence here, this text is that the City of Middleton uses proactive strategies and practices to meet emerging future needs across all sectors of the community and endure future disruptions to our climate, ecological, and social systems. So just like we took some guidance from the work that was already done in the comprehensive plan, we also checked in with the city's sustainable city plan and the sustainability and committee and their work and some of their goals and language around their mission, and wanted to sort of reflect that here. So hopefully that looks right, and we can talk about that more in the discussion section or breakout discussions. But some recommended actions to support this principle might be to implement the sustainable city plan, and specifically the city's goal to use 100% renewable energy by 2040. Kind of continuation of work that's already being done to enhance natural areas or expand the use of renewable energy in Middleton. So continuing strong action that's already been taken. And thinking more broadly about how the city can encourage and support Middleton residents in living more sustainable lives and more sustainable lifestyles. So this is kind of something that is embedded in the strategic objectives we'll see, and then future actions the city will take. Financial and operational stability. This is really, as we kind of discussed, of what a strategic plan is and how it has sort of an organizational and operational focus. This is a critical, was cited as a critical objective, but also saw the way that it was part of all of the work that the city needs to do. So this principle is that investments of City of Middleton time, resources, and funds advance long-term and operational sustainability and keep Middleton a financially successful community. So as we heard in some of the feedback, people very proud and very optimistic about the financial practices of the community and want to continue to have that kind of success. But as you can see in some of these actions, we'll need to address some of the constraints and challenges that the city faces, possibly, by pursuing referendums. This is already kind of efforts are already underway there to address critical, service needs, including staffing and public facilities. Looking at the use of technology to improve the delivery of service and improving, staff agility, so to support staff's ability to do their jobs. And then thinking ahead on TIF, kind of getting in the weeds of some city operations, but thinking ahead to the closure of TID number 3 and prioritizing sort of what remains in terms of capital investments and what kind of impacts there might be to the general fund. Those are all steps and things that can be kind of taken to advance this principle and make sure that there's financial and operational stability moving forward. And then the fourth,
Mary, I see somebody had a question. What is TID number 3? Thank you. That is tax increment district number 3. So tax increment district is a funding tool that the state makes available to communities to encourage growth and development within designated areas. As the property values rise within that area, the taxes from that new development go into a special fund that can then be used to add additional infrastructure and improvements, to assist development projects, to market the area, a number of things. And so in this case, TID number 3 includes all the downtown and out to Greenway Station and some areas north of that into the business park. It's been incredibly successful, probably the most successful tax increment district in the state. I would say most communities in the state have at least one tax increment district. Middleton has 2. There's TID number 5, which is more over on the east side of town. But they do have a limited life. And so a lot of the improvements that you've seen in the downtown and Greenway Station area have been funded through the TIF. And so with the TIF coming towards the end of its life and expiring, the idea here would be to finish the projects that really need to be done. And then when the TIF closes, all of that new value comes onto the general tax roll. So it really raises the entire valuation of the community, which then impacts the city's finances and tax rate, as well as the school district and the county as well. So preparing for that, to finish the work that needs to be done, and then understanding what those impacts are going to be once it closes. So thank you for that question.
So then the last core principle here is communication and engagement. So, all of the work that the city is going to do and does, wanting to make sure that the dialogue and the two-way message out to residents and from residents and businesses is those lines of communication are open. So this principle is expanded dialogue with city residents, businesses, and partners efficiently communicates the city's decisions, actions, and needs, and increases access to opportunities to participate in city decision making. So thinking kind of broadly about, what and creatively about what kind of platforms, media that is used to reach residents, making sure that all materials and communications are produced in languages that are used by Middleton residents and employees. As the community is diversifying, there are more languages spoken, so making sure information is accessible in the languages that are spoken in the community. Continuing some of the virtual and hybrid meetings, sort of like this, that have make meetings and opportunities to engage with city decision makers more accessible and kind of can increase public participation, maybe more so than in-person meetings during the day and things like that. and thinking of ways to take decision-making outside some of our traditional channels and going and taking the meetings and opportunities to engage outside of City Hall. And think that that is very important. And another area that I think is important and heard a lot of feedback on is creating a dedicated public information or communications position, somebody that can really tackle, if this is going to be a core principle that is, filtered and goes throughout all of our strategic objectives and actions in the strategic plan, making sure someone has that as their core responsibility would make sense. So this is the communication and engagement principle, and kind of rounds out those 4 key components that are seen throughout all, or kind of embedded in all of the strategic objectives. So from here, Scott, I can start launching some polling questions, and if you want to kind of walk through again what we were asking of them here, that would be great.
Sure. So again, we'll be at this point looking for general level of agreement with each of the 4, and then also a final question about are these, the right 4? So if there are ones that are missing, or you think this certain one doesn't belong, take that down in the notes, and when we have the discussion, we can talk about that further. So we'll start with the equity. Again, your level of agreement with the core principle as described, of the equity-centered environment. Okay, I think 12 is our number, so now we're up to 14. Great. So looks like a little over 70% of agree, strongly agree, a couple of folks with no opinion and disagree. We'll go to the next one. So the sustainability and resiliency, level of agreement with that as a core principle that would underpin all the other items in the plan. No, up to 16 respondents, excellent. 17, all right. So pretty high level of agreement, and again, a couple of one no opinion and a few that disagree. So especially those that disagree, if you want to kind of make some notes and share your thoughts with us about that when we get to the breakouts, that would be great. Let's go to the next one. The financial operations and operational stability, that core principle. One more maybe, 16, okay. So almost a unanimous agreement, one no opinion. And then finally, the communications. Communication and engagement. Again, this is communication works kind of 2 ways. So both city communicating out and getting feedback as well, and opportunities to participate. 9, 10, 14. Okay, so a little more diverse opinion here. So again, those folks with the disagree, strongly disagree, or no opinion, look forward to kind of hearing some of your thoughts in the breakouts. And then our last question is, as a group, do these really kind of formulate the core principles that should help really drive this effort? And we'll talk in the breakouts if there's some that you think are missing or don't belong, but in general, is this a solid foundation on which to kind of carry this effort forward? One or two more, okay. So pretty solid level of agreement there, a couple disagree, and a couple no opinion. So thank you for that. And so with that, then we'll talk about these 5 strategic objectives, those being transportation and infrastructure, business development, affordability, recreation and wellness, public safety and emergency management. And what's important to understand here is that, there's certainly city services that don't appear on this list, and that does not mean that they're not important or that somehow the plan would ignore them. These are the 5 that have kind of, let's say, risen to the top from all that input that we've received through all of last year and earlier this year, that these were ones where maybe we, if that's our vision, maybe we have some work to do in elevating these things, or, hey, the world's really changing and we're going to really have to pay attention to these particular things. So this is not at the exclusion of any particular community issue or service that doesn't appear on this list. We'll cover the full gamut of things within the strategic plan, but this then starts to provide at least some level of prioritization for the things that the city maybe needs to spend a little extra attention on, and some additional resources to get these to where the vision says the community wants to be. So again, we'll kind of walk through these one at a time, and then at the end, we'll kind of do the quick polling. And then after that, we'll go into our breakout discussions. So let's go ahead. So I know there's a lot of text here, so we'll give a couple of minutes, but I'll kind of read the area in the sort of highlighted part, and then the bullets under there, sort of examples of what this could mean, how these things could be advanced that would be then picked up in more detail within the plan. So for transportation and infrastructure, it's developing a diversity of partnerships and innovative financial strategies to maintain a highly functional, multifaceted transportation system of roads, interchanges, transit, and bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And some of the ways that could be implemented would be improving regional and local transit connections through new partnerships, preparing facilities and infrastructure for future technologies, including renewable energy and energy efficiency, improving bike and ped safety, investing in fleet electrification, as well as public and private electric vehicle infrastructure, and ensuring the benefits of transportation accrue to all residents, regardless of race, age, ability, or neighborhood of residence. So really being thoughtful and equitable in how we spend our resources on transportation and infrastructure. Next one is business development, strengthening the business community to support a diverse base of large and small businesses that have facilities, resources, and workforce needed to innovate and grow. And some of the things that could be done to support that would be attracting and retaining small locally owned businesses, particularly in the downtown, increasing community awareness of Middleton employers and career mentorship opportunities so that residents know what's available to them in their own community, improving Middleton's industrial and business parks with infill development and expanding the mix of uses, and supporting increased racial and socioeconomic diversity in business owners through things like incubators, co-working space, office rental support, and partnership and mentorship opportunities. Next one is affordability. This, again, was one where we've made a change for those of you who maybe saw this about a month ago, where this was strictly limited to housing. We've sort of broadened this to affordability in general. And that is employing all available tools to make Middleton a community that is affordable and accessible to all community members. So a lot of this still focuses on housing, but really looking beyond strictly the housing aspect and using state and federal programs to really increase the affordability and accessibility of the Middleton lifestyle, including housing tax credits and loans and grants, using city codes and incentive policies and land use practices to increase affordable housing, continue using tax increment financing to assist affordable housing and create a fund when we close 3, and pursuing partnerships to create entry-level ownership opportunities for first-time home buyers and groups historically excluded from ownership. And then recreation and wellness, growing opportunities for residents and employees in the community to lead healthy, active lives through recreational facilities, programs, and open spaces that are accessible to all. So that could include expanding joint facility agreements with area schools to reduce costs and increase accessibility to underserved groups such as teens, exploring partnerships to expand the variety, affordability, and inclusivity of youth recreation offerings, completing a civic campus master plan to determine the appropriate design and composition of what might be included within that to serve community needs, and expanding, looking strictly beyond recreation or sports into arts, music, and nature-based offerings within our kind of parks, recreation, and wellness programs. And then we have public safety and emergency management. So ensuring that Middleton is prepared for emergency events, including extreme weather and public health crises, through appropriate investments in resources, staff, training, and partnerships. Getting the staff trained up to implement the various aspects of the emergency preparedness plan. When something does happen, people know what to do. Continuing to coordinate with Dane County on the preparation and implementation of the hazard mitigation plan. So how can we prevent disasters from happening in the future, or at least really limit the impacts? Expand regional partnerships and mutual aid agreements to improve efficiency and cost effectiveness, and evaluating public safety and emergency management impacts and needs as the city grows and adds population. So what does that do to our staffing and resource requirements in the areas of public safety and emergency management as we continue to grow as a community? So we've walked through all of those. We're going to pull on these, Meredith. So we're going to pull on these, and then we'll convene our breakout groups. We want to kind of hear back from you, but let's kind of walk through these 5 real quick on transportation. So we've Meredith's kind of popped back up there what the full text of that description is. The white thing that pops up where the pull is, you can grab that with your mouse and pull it over. So if it's covering that thing up, just for those of you that use Zoom too much, just to know that you can uncover it and be able to read the text of the objective as well as see the poll. We got 15 here, so pretty much strong level of agreement on the transportation issue and infrastructure. Let's go to the next one. So business development, again, strengthening the community, business community, support large and small. Couple more responses coming in. So mostly agree with that. A couple of strong agree, a couple of no opinion. Excuse me. Let's go to the next one. The affordability, employing all available tools to make it a community that's affordable and accessible to all. Some more diversity of opinion here, mostly agreeing, but a lot of no opinions and some disagreeing. So again, please jot down your thoughts. Looks like this will be a good conversation in our breakout groups here in just a minute. Recreation and wellness, growing opportunities for residents and employers to lead healthy lives, and increasing accessibility to programs. Right, pretty high level of agreement there, but a couple of folks not so much. And then lastly, the safety and emergency management, ensuring Middleton is prepared and has adequate resources and training to assist through emergencies. So pretty high level of agreement there. All right. So Meredith, you want to walk us through the next part?
Sure. So we've reached sort of the point where we'll be breaking out into different breakout groups, it looks like, with our numbers, so that we have enough people for some good conversation and maybe a diversity of opinion and experience and perspective in the group, but then also not making the groups too big. We'll have 2 breakout rooms. And once those kind of conversations are concluded, we'll end the meeting from there. So we won't be coming all back together as a group. We'll be capturing all of the information and feedback in the breakout sessions. So we wanted to first take this opportunity while we're all still together to thank you again for being here tonight and for all of the input you've already provided through the polling questions, and then cover a little bit about what's next. So from here, we'll take this feedback and start drafting the document. As I mentioned, this recording will also go online, and there will be the same questions that we've discussed tonight available for anyone who wasn't able to be here to provide feedback for a week or two, and then, you know, kind of gathering all of that input together, move forward into drafting the strategic plan document, bringing a draft of that forward in April and May. And again, we'll have another opportunity for a public meeting as we roll out the final plan in May or June, and kind of see how the vision and framework have guided completion of the plan. So check the strategic plan page of the Middleton website for updates, as well as the link to this recording and the sort of survey version of all of the questions that we've answered tonight. If you attended tonight and you don't have to go take the survey, it'll be the same questions, but if you know of anyone who wasn't able to be there, I hope you can encourage them to participate. And if you have any questions or want direct contact with me, my email is on the flyer and in this presentation. So I'll try and drop it in the chat too while we're all still together. And you can contact me directly. So the breakout groups, we will, like I said, there's 2 breakout groups. There's going to be a facilitator in each group. It'll be myself and Scott, and we'll be taking notes and sort of facilitating, asking a few prompting questions and help us kind of get into more detail about what we heard tonight. We were kind of focusing on some of the bigger ideas. So if you have some specific wording suggestions on how some things were written on the graphic or anything like that, or formatting suggestions, we'd love to hear those. But depending on the kind of length of the discussion, might be a better thing to follow up by email, and be happy to talk more about those. You'll get a notice to accept or click OK to join a breakout session, and we'll see you in there as a group to dig into the content in this kind of specific components. Scott, as a reminder, we have to join a group. So if you want to do that.
All right, Meredith. Oh, we're good.